Hello and welcome to the next episode of the AV Experience. I'm your host, Ryan. I will be joined shortly, hopefully someday, by Jonathan Arkea on AVS Forum. He is traveling, coming back from I don't know what kind of get together. It was he said it was some kind of music, and the name kind of escapes me right now, but he can tell us when he gets back. He's looking for a microphone currently because he's in his car, and he is so dedicated that he's traveling with his family, but still wanted to do the stream. So huge shout out to him. We're just waiting for him to join. Um, Today's just going to be a question and answer session. There's no topic. We're just going to talk about what everybody's doing, how everything's going, anything new going on in the industry, and if there's been any changes or anything else going on, so on and so forth. So if you have a question or you have something you'd like to discuss, leave it in chat. We get into them in the order they come in. So it's first in, first out. We're already getting some good questions. Finster asked one, and then Zach has asked one. So we'll get to those in a moment. I had a customer come in today, which is what I have been doing all day. Came in to see a QL3000 and the Kaleidoscape. Just took him to the airport. So that goes for anybody. If anybody has any interest in seeing the MadVR Experience Center, I'm always happy to even host you overnight if that's something you need instead of staying at a hotel. But I, just like a lot of the other guys here in Kansas City, am open to sharing the space and the love of the hobby. So it's definitely not a sales approach. It's just I want to showcase my love and share it with everybody else. So we did that today. He loved the QL. We'll see where that goes. But what is new? Has anything else new happened? We went to a Royals game last night. They're our local MLB team. That was fun. It was my daughter's second large-scale sporting event. She always says, "We're going to see the dads play." So I always find that really funny when she's talking about all of that. I want to know, first question for chat, going the opposite way, what movies have you guys all watched recently? The last movie that I watched, if we can call it a movie, I mean, it was a movie, was Longlegs, starring Nicolas Cage. And man, I turned it on with my wife, and my wife goes, "I've already seen this." I'm like, God, I was waiting to watch this with her, and then she's already watched it. What? So I ended up watching it by myself, and I thought it was gonna be a crime thriller because that's, I think, what it said. I don't remember exactly what the description said, but I thought it was gonna be a crime thriller. And it was, but it wasn't. Nicolas Cage was fantastic. Like, he was awesome as Longlegs, and I won't ruin it because it's still a current movie. It's come out not too long ago, and I think it's worth people watching, maybe, if you're into that kind of movie. I'll just say that it went a direction that I wasn't really expecting. I was expecting it to be more of a crime thriller, and it went somewhere else. So where that went, I don't know. But just take that for what it is. I think it's worth watching if you're into that kind of thing. But just know that it is a little graphic and it can be a little scary at times. SD Kelly says Mission Impossible Final Reckoning, crazy stunts by Tom Cruise in 191 IMAX recommended. So you've seen it, Kelly. If you've seen it, I think that's super cool. I won't see it until it comes out. I am starring your questions as they come in. Shinedown 54 says 13 Lives on Prime was really good. Is that a recent movie? Is that something that just came out? I'm trying to think of other things. I've got a huge backlog of movies that I need to dive into and go through. So need to start going through some stuff. Longlegs was just kind of first on the list. And unfortunately, I've been waiting to watch things with my wife. And then she pulls that on me. Like, oh yeah, I've already watched that. Thanks. Like, thank you. I've been trying to be the good husband and wait to watch stuff, and you watched it on your own. Thanks. That was very helpful. Another movie that I recently watched was Warfare. It was, again, a movie that was different than I expected it to be going in. It had some of the best sound for a gunfight I've ever heard. And chat, correct me if I'm wrong. I think it's this movie by A24 where they recorded each gunshot from the angle that it was supposed to be taken. So you get the snaps and the hisses, and then they used the correct caliber for each gunshot as it took place. So every gun that was fired sounded vastly different. And it was there's a scene in there. I'm not going to spoil it at all, but there's a scene in there where you feel like you're in the middle of the gunfight. You're like smack dab in the middle of everything. And it's turned into be an awesome showcase because there's a lot of bass, there's a lot of highs, and there's just a lot of action. It's not too long. I think I recorded the scene I put on Kscape's like 2 minutes, so it's not overtly long, and it gets the point across. And I thought it was fantastic. Again, I am starring questions as they come in. It's going to be first in, first out. I will get to them once I get off my pulpit and start talking and going through these questions. But I want to know from chat, and you guys have been saying, Shinedown says 2022. Is that a movie? Is that a movie? Maybe I'm out of touch. Um, Palindrome guy says he really liked Long Legs. Very creepy. I saw Sinners a couple days ago, and it was brilliant. So this is Palindrome guy talking about Long Legs. Legs. Uh, it was creepy. Nicolas Cage did an excellent job. I just thought it was going a different direction, and I wish it did go the direction I thought it was. I wanted it to be the crime thriller, and it kind of was, but kind of wasn't. And it was okay. I don't regret watching it. I'll say that. I don't regret putting my time into watching it. But I think it could have been a little bit different. Kelly says, I told you Warfare had unbelievable audio a few shows ago. The gunshots and the explosions plus show if force is it was awesome. I mean, it was not the movie that I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be this epic like war movie that we've all come to see them as fast-paced, action in your face, like nonstop, and that's not what Warfare was. It was still I enjoyed the movie. My wife fell asleep. She's like, turn it down, and I know whenever she tells me to turn it down that she's going to fall asleep. And that's exactly what happened. She fell asleep. So I enjoyed it immensely. And it's now has a place on my demo reel. So don't regret watching that one at all. Finster says A Working Man and The Departed on Prime. The Departed's been out forever. But I guess if that was a movie that you just watched, power to you. Shinedown says, what does Shinedown say? You asked how recent 13 Live was. Okay. So he said 2022 in another comment, and I asked when that came out. So he was answering my question. That makes sense. Okay. Thanks for clarifying, Shinedown. I appreciate that. Kevin Orr says Sinners hits Kscape on June 3rd. What is Sinners? Give me a synopsis. Like, what's it about? I know nothing about it. Is it another crime drama? K for Consent says, saw the new Lilo and Stitch with my toddler. Toddler recommended. I've heard that's actually a good movie. My wife actually, funnily enough, brought it up today, and she wants to see it. I liked the original. I haven't seen it in many years, but it's probably going to be pretty good. I will watch it, especially K for Consent if your toddler recommended it. That's all the news I need. But while you guys keep dropping what movies you've watched, let's talk about some questions. Zach262 asked one specifically for Jonathan, so if we could hold off on Jonathan answering that, or for Jonathan to answer that until he gets back, we'll get to that. Finster asked a question. Asked a few weeks ago about JBL Control 328C for Atmos speakers. Just noticed it says 93 dB sensitive measured half space. What does that mean? Will it still do reference? All the specs still good. A lot of times that has to do with, and Jonathan's going to know more about this, but it's where and how it was measured. So you just have to put it into context when you're comparing it against other speakers. The main thing that you've got to consider, I think it usually means it was measured at 1 meter instead of 2 meters. So chat, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm pretty sure it usually means it was 1 meter instead of 2 meters, but I'm probably wrong. I usually am. You just need to put it in and make sure that you understand the distance measurement for how it was measured, and make sure that it was measured anechoically, like if it was outside and it's not getting room gain or anything like that. 93 dB is pretty good. If it's in comparison to measuring at 2 meters, that is a little step down because that's 6 dB. So you're going from 93 to 87. So that's something to consider. But you're probably okay as long as you're not too horrifically far away from that speaker. Top speakers are usually pretty close to you, within 6 feet with a normal ceiling. So I can't say it's too bad. Let's see what chat says. Half spaces with one boundary wall. Oh, okay. Well, Derek corrected me. So with one boundary wall, so you are gaining some room gain there. So I would try and look up to see if anybody has put that on a clipple. What are your other speakers? I think is a question that should be asked. Finster, what other speakers are you running in your space? Are they all JBLs? And I'm just starring questions as they come in still. But answer me that, Finster. We'll come back to you once you put that in there. Paul Travisano asks, for a budget Dirac ART setup with a denim receiver, should we try and get full range bed levels, or can ART utilize the 4 subs sufficiently? The further down you can allow a speaker to go, the more you can allow ART to do. But if you're doing it just for ART, I don't know that it's really worth it. I think subs, as long as they're placed correctly, can do a ton of work. We have ART in the MadVR Experience Center, and the surrounds are definitely not full range, and they still do plenty of support. Now, there are 11 subs in that space, so that could be why it's doing what it's doing. But I think you have to draw the line somewhere. Like, yeah, you could buy all full range, but then you're running into the compromise of space, right? Your crossover probably isn't going to take advantage of that. Not that ART uses a traditional crossover anyway, but you're probably not going to utilize a good portion of that speaker because the sub's going to do it. So a bigger question that I have is, what's the room like, right? Instead of buying those full tower speakers, can you save money, get bookshelves or in walls or on walls, and put that money that you save into the room? So instead of having ART do that, can you actually fix the underlying issue instead of putting a Band-Aid over the top of it? Now, sometimes you can't, and that's where ART can be hugely beneficial. But in my experience, and my recommendation to everyone is deal with the room first, right? Try not to fix issues by just buying equipment. That's not the right way to do it because the issue still exists. The best example that I can give is, and I'm sorry if you're for chiropractors, it's not that I'm against chiropractors, but a lot of times people go to chiropractors and they're like, my back hurts, I need to go to a chiropractor. And then they'll go to a chiropractor and then they'll leave and they're like, I feel better. And then a week later, they're like, I have the same problem. They go to the chiropractor and it's this cycle. So they're just fixing the symptom. They're not fixing the cause. And in this issue with ART, you're not really fixing the symptom, or you're fixing the symptom, you're not fixing the cause. And you're going to get a better result if you fix the cause. It's always better to fix things physically than try and fix them in software. That's not a great way to do things because the software fix is never going to be perfect. So my recommendation is always fix the underlying issue first, if you can. So that's my recommendation to you. Who was that? That was not Finster. That was Paul. So that's my recommendation to you, Paul. I'm going to unstar these that we've answered these. So Palindrome guy says, this is another question, or I guess his first question from him. Watched last week's episode, which was great. Jonathan mentioned that all of your home cinemas were better than a commercial cinema. They all looked 100K plus. Can you do it on a lower budget? Absolutely. Absolutely. And Jonathan, there's a lot of the guys have not spent that. And here's the big thing that I think you need to realize. And I talked to my customer about this today, is that you guys see our theaters online, right? I'm a dealer, so that's one thing that you've got to consider about my space. I'm doing a showroom. Jonathan's back, so I'll jump to him after. Well, we'll come back to this question. Let's see if he fixed his stuff. Did you fix your stuff?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear yourself?
No.
Is it bad? All right, that'll work then.
No. Okay. You sound terrible, but it'll work.
Oh.
No, you don't sound terrible. You don't sound like you normally do with your SM7B. So it is what it is. It's fine. It's better to have you
on the highway.
Better to have you than not have you. So I think that's fine. Well, there was actually a question directed specifically at you that we'll come back to. But I was answering the question.
Okay.
I'll repeat it here.
Sure.
So Palindrome Guy asked, you do have a little bit of a delay. So you're hearing me at a little bit of a delay, just so you know. Probably because you're on a cell network, but just a heads up. So Palindrome Guy asked, watched last week's episode, which was great. Jonathan mentioned that all of your home cinemas were better than a commercial cinema. They all look to be 100K plus. Can you do it on a lower budget? And then Jonathan left. So he's not going to have great connection. So I'm just going to answer this question. Yes, you can. And what I was getting to on this was the journey. The journey, a lot of the guys that were part of that crawl have been on this journey for a long time. So you're seeing the culmination of a multi-decade journey. So when you see and say, oh, their rooms look to be over 100K, like, yeah, they've been on this journey for many years. And if you were in a hobby for many years, spending money every year, it accrues, it grows, and you realize what you want, and you start spending more because you realize what you want, and you realize what you're going to use long term. Or you build stuff yourself. Like you're getting 18-inch subs and then building the cabinets yourself. You're getting the speakers and you're building them yourself. You're buying speakers used. You're buying projectors used. You know how to make your own acoustic treatment. There's all kinds of ways to save money. So I encourage people to be very careful about comparing, if you're just getting into this space now, to guys that have been doing this for a very long time, right? You can't do that, because you're in different places. You're in different points of the journey. Let's see if he's back. All right, you're back.
I didn't hear the question. It dropped me right when you said, hey, I got a question from Palindrome Guy from last week's episode, and it dropped me.
I already answered the question. If it drops again, just hit me when you're home.
Sure.
Okay. So I already answered the question, because he was asking or I'm answering the question. He said, you guys have spaces that are all seem to be better than commercial cinemas, or you said they were, but they all seem to be visually, like looking at the stream, over $100,000. Can you do it with a lower budget? And my rebuttal to that was, well, not all of them are $100,000. But the main thing that you have to consider is that a lot of the guys that were on that crawl have been doing this for a very long time. So you're looking at people's theaters that have had a significantly longer journey than other people may have. So you have to be very careful comparing yourself to people that are in different points of a journey, right? It's not really fair. And then I talked about building your own speakers, building your own acoustic treatments, use projectors, things like that, building your own subs, knowing what you want so you're willing to spend more, that kind of thing. And spending money year over year, right? Let's say you've been on this journey for 25 years. You may have accumulated quite a bit of stuff if you're spending stuff every year for 25 years. So he'll be back when he gets home. So not a big deal. And I'm starring these questions as we go. If I miss one, don't hate me, but I'm just starring these, catching these before we go back to it. Yes, Jonathan's driving. Okay, so I'm caught up on those. But does that answer your question, Palindrome Guy? I hope it does. And a lot of those theaters are not over $100,000, right? They may appear to be because of how they're put together, but they're not. So ask another question or a follow-up, if you will. But I think that kind of answers that question. Brian Cobb asks, I have 2 rows of seating and would like side speakers for each row. Could I use Y splitters from the processor to 4 amp channel speakers, or would this create a comb filtering issue? So it would create a potential filtering issue. The other thing that it's going to cause problems with is those speakers are in different locations, and the EQ that the room EQ is going to apply, if you do use room EQ, is not going to work for each one of those locations. So when you start getting into the higher end processors, they allow you to duplicate channels, or to have those speakers, you've got a side surround, then you've got a side surround one that are actually, they'll move objects through instead of duplicating a speaker. So you can, My suggestion to this, Brian, is don't build a theater around a second row and compromise the reference seating position. If you're not going to use that seat 99% of the time, don't compromise for it. It's not worth it. The people that sit there normally are not going to care unless you move reference seating positions all the time. And even then, you can build a couple different calibrations and switch between them. Do not compromise on the reference seating position for a 1% use case. People do this all the time, and it is not worth it. All you're doing is selling yourself short and creating a bunch of negative attributes that you then have to deal with for a use case that's never going to be utilized. So what I would suggest is either don't use those speakers. I would not use a Y splitter personally, or actually use them for a different channel. Like you've got your LCRs, then you got your front wides, you got your sides, you got your rear wides and your rears. So if you can utilize a different channel location, do that. That would be my suggestion. Let's scroll down to see if there was a follow-up there. When sitting in the rear row, theater with two side surround sounds bad, blah. Okay. So I don't think you've rebutted to that yet. It's tough when you're one question. That basically answered my question earlier too about the, okay. So sorry if I'm missing like rebuttals and stuff. It's hard to keep track of everything when you're one guy, but we're making progress. But does that make sense about the multiple rows? I see all too often that people try and do this. Like, I want 2 rows. I want 3 rows because I got big space. But the problem with that is you're compromising on the reference seating position. And even in big rooms, big rooms, like Ryan Kramer has a huge room. And I can imagine that the majority of the time, it's only 1 row that's being utilized, or it's just Ryan in there. Do not compromise and make it so that your calibration or the audio is subpar because the 1% time that somebody sits in a back row or another seating location. It's not worth it. The people that your family and stuff that come over, my family included, when they're in there, my wife is in there a lot with me. She does not care. She does not matter to her. Now, she doesn't like watching movies on the TV. She likes speakers. She likes at least a soundbar. But she doesn't need the theater. She likes it, but she doesn't care. I care. So I'm not going to compromise for her. And she knows that, and she doesn't care. So don't do that. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox on that one. Jeffrey, that was this is a similar question. So Jeffrey Fry asks, for those two-row theaters, do most just do a basic surround and surround backs as opposed to needing a processor that can have 2 sets of surrounds, 1 for each row? Yes. You can fix it using dispersion. You can fix it a multitude of ways, but again, don't compromise, right? If your limitation is a number of channels from whatever pre or AVR that you're using, don't compromise on a higher dispersion speaker to allow your second row to have a better experience. If nobody's going to sit in your second row all the time, who cares? Do something for your main row, for the main seating position. Don't compromise for something that's never used. Don't sacrifice your room EQ for something that's never utilized. All right. Sorry. I thought we were done, and then I saw the question from Jeffrey, so I'm off now. Okay. A Leon, next question, says, I've been meaning to ask you guys, what would you consider the best food to get in KC? We'll be in town next weekend and looking for options. I would say the best food, I love Jack Stack. It's got great barbecue, but the main reason I like Jack Stack, this isn't a sponsor, I just like Jack Stack. I was actually there today. I took my customer there today. They have excellent service, and they are very, very consistent. That's the main reason I like them. They have great barbecue. Is it the best in the city? I don't know. I think it's great, but the service more than makes up for everything else. Regardless if it's the best, it's still, we go there consistently. It's great. That's where I would go. That or Q39. I prefer a sit-down restaurant instead of going to a counter and ordering. That's what I would do. Hey, Leon, if you're going to be in town, shoot me a PM. Send me a message. You can go to ascendav.net and then shoot me a message or send me a text. My phone number's on there, and we can hook up. If you're going to be in town, I'm more than welcome to have you over for a demo. I know some of the other guys will, depending on when you're going to be in town. But I work from home, so I'm happy to have you out, and I'll happy to take you out to eat. So hit me up. I'll be in town. And that goes for everybody that's in chat. If you're in Kansas City, want to see that MadVR Experience Center, want to see another theater that's in town, shoot Jonathan or I a PM or shoot us a text. My number's available on ascendav.net, or you can ask me for it on AVS or something like that. I like many others in Kansas City, just want to see the space grow. And we want to share the love with what home theater brings to the table. That's what this is all about. So if you guys are ever here, or if you're already here and you don't really know anybody, hit us up. I'm happy to have some fun. It's nothing. The space is designed to be shared. I mean, we put multiple seats in our theaters. We compromise our theaters, like I was just talking about with the last question, for multiple rows that we never use, in the idea that we want the people behind us, if they come, to have a better experience. We do this because this hobby is designed to be shared. That's what this is about. So if you're ever in town, want to get together, ascendav.net. My phone number's on there. Shoot Jonathan or I a PM on AVS Forum. I'm Multar. He's Archaea. Send us a message or drop us a comment on YouTube, though we don't read those as much. Definitely text or AVS Forum PM is the best way to do it. But if you want to get a hold of us and share it and come experience something, hit us up. Definitely worth it. But that's what I would do, Alium. Yo mama says, is the Marantz 8805 processor still relevant in 2025? Absolutely. My question to you, Yo Mama, would be, what do you feel you're not getting from the 8805? Do you need HDMI? Does yours have HDMI 2.1? I think the tail end of those 8805s had HDMI 2.1. Chat, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm nowhere near the end of chat, so sorry if I'm missing it. You know what I should do? Is I should put up the chat overlay, like a not being a plebeian, so I can see the end of chat while having going and staying somewhere else in chat. That would be the smart thing to do, you would think. But who am I? So I think it's still relevant. If you need more channels, if there's an HDMI spec that you don't have, if you need Dirac, maybe it's not relevant. But if it meets all of those criteria and you can get you don't have it and you get a sick deal on a used one, yeah. If it meets your use case, it is relevant. I say it again. If it meets your use case, if it ticks all the boxes that you need for your setup or whatever you're trying to do, if it does that, it's still relevant. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. There's no need for you to buy something new just because it's new. If it doesn't do anything different, or you don't need the extended warranty, you don't need any of that, it's not worth it. It is not worth it. So in this case, Yo Mama, if it fixes or does what you need it to do, it's absolutely still relevant. Vincent Ertz, sorry if I mispronounced that, asks, when stacking sealed subwoofer boxes, do I need to isolate them from each other, rubber pads or something? I would, because if your box is not completely inert, it's going to vibrate. And maybe it's not going to impact anything on the sound, but over time, you might get a subwoofer that'll walk a little bit and eventually it may fall off. So I would isolate it, put it on rubber pads. You can also get what's called elephant bark. It's a really thick rubber that you can get off Amazon. It's really heavy. That's what we used in between subs, and it does really well. Not only at isolating, but gripping so that things don't walk. We also used it to level. It did really well. So look up elephant bark on Amazon if you want something. It's not all that expensive to get a lot of it. And that's what I would do, Vincent. And that's actually what I use underneath between all of the 21. So there's 6 21s in the front of the MadVR Experience Center. And there's elephant bark on the very bottom to level them, and in between the subs to keep them from walking and isolating them. And then I have cinder blocks for all of the surrounds, and there's elephant bark sitting on the cinder blocks so that the speaker is not just sitting on the cinder blocks, again, to kind of isolate it from the concrete, and it stops it from walking. And I've had no issues with things walking. So that's what I would do. No sense to overpay for anything like that. Jeffrey Fry with another question. Do you basically need a ton of subs if you want an Ascendo theater, since their speakers only go down to 80 hertz? Also, how'd you choose to use art over waveforming, etc.? I didn't choose art over waveforming. I use both, and they're both better at different things. So it's really going to come down to, what do you need to fix in your theater and what do you use and how are you going to calibrate? Like the differences in mine could very well be down to calibration. They do sound a little bit different in certain situations, mainly 2-channel, and in multi-channel and movies, they sound virtually identical. But it's really going to come down to, like I said earlier, what issues do you need to fix in your room that you can't fix by fixing the room? Because art is very different from waveforming. Optimizer is very different from Dirac. So you've just got to figure out what things do you need to fix the problems. I want to encourage people to think about this premise. Do not buy something just because it's the best. Buy something because it fixes something in your room. The best may not fix it. You should be overcoming problems that you cannot fix physically in the room with equipment. Equipment should allow you to be, is a tool to fix an issue. You should not build the room around the equipment. It should be the other way around. It should be the equipment uses a tool to fix the room. Okay? So in this case, you don't need a ton of subs. Back to Jeffrey's question. You don't need a ton of subs. 80 hertz a lot of times is more than enough. Jonathan is actually well above that for his crossover, and he's got subs up front in an array, and then he's got near fields. So I don't think you need to treat it any differently than anything else. I would encourage you to have potentially front and rear subs, but you still don't. You don't need to, for sure. As you go up the Ascendo line, so from the 5s to the 6s to the 10s to the 12s, and from the 12s and the 10s to the pros and then the pros berylliums. So the normal line into the pro, the tweeter and the woofer change, and the woofer allows it to dig a little bit deeper with some extended SPL. The cabinet gets a little bit bigger, so you get some more extension. There's things like that, but I don't really think it's a huge problem. I mean, my crossover is probably higher than you would think it is, and it sounds fantastic. So don't be all stuck on the 80 hertz crossovers where it needs to be. The crossover should just be where it needs to be. 80 hertz is not necessarily the best place for a crossover, right? You could have integration problems with your mains to your subs at 80 hertz, and you may have a much better crossover going from 100 hertz for a crossover down to your subs. That may be way better in a smoother transition, and you're probably not going to notice a difference because the male vocals happen typically above that. As long as you're above or below the crossover point for your male registers, you're going to be okay. Now, if you have a massive room curve, massive house curve that's boosting the subs way up here, and it brings your crossover point, because remember, you're either doing a 12 dB per octave, a 24 dB per octave for your crossover, so you're dropping that many dB per octave as you move right. If your house curve is way up here and your crossover is like 90 hertz, right? Well, this is going to push everything up or out because you're only dropping, if you're at a 12 dB per octave crossover, you're only dropping 12 dB per octave coming over. So you may be pushing way out here for your subs. And it's just something that you need to consider when trying to integrate and looking at your house curve is it's not just affecting the subs when you're boosting the bass. You're absolutely affecting everything else upstream and the integration with the mains. So just something to consider there. Great question. Paul with another question. Let's unstar these. Hey, Ryan, what in the Ascendo lineup would you consider the minimum you could use as an LCR in a 1917-9 room? And what kind of price point does that start at? I won't discuss price here. Ascendo doesn't like doing that. I mean, I would be happy to, but the brand doesn't necessarily like doing that in a public forum. You could reach out to me, and I'm happy to discuss pricing that way. What I would do in that space is honestly as big as you can go. You're not going to harm yourself by going to a 12-inch Ascendo woofer with a compression driver. That's not going to hurt you. And the larger you go, the better it's going to be, right? You can extend lower. You've got more SPL headroom. That does not mean that the 10, the 6, and the 5 are bad. It's just the 12 is better, right? You're gaining more. You have more flexibility given what that 12 is capable of. I see a lot of people do 12s up front and 10s around, or they'll 10 up front and 6s around. It just depends on what you're trying to do, what the budget is, and really at the end of the day, what SPL you're trying to reach and what the distance is from the speaker to the reference seating position. That's going to be a big thing that you need to consider is the distance, right? We got to stop looking at like I said earlier, what is the best, and look at what works best in the space to fix a problem. You got to look at the speaker, the pre, the amps, the sources. They're all tools to fix issues that occurs in a space. And that's what I want, how I want everybody to start looking at this is equipment is a tool to fix a room. The room is not a tool to fix equipment. But I think all too often we see all of the equipment. We're like, oh man, shiny new object. I'm going to buy that. And the most common one is I can't hear my audio from my center channel. So like, I'm going to get a bigger center channel. And while, yeah, you're going to make it louder, most of the time it's the room that's causing your problem. And you're just changing the way your issue sounds. Where you could just treat it and your problem would go away and you'd be fine with the equipment you have. Now, maybe your significant other, your partner doesn't allow you or want you to treat. That's where art and stuff can be hugely beneficial. You could get a less dispersive speaker that's more narrow, maybe more beamforming. That can help quite a bit. But again, you're using equipment to fix an issue in the room that you can't overcome. But you should always fix the room first if you can. You got to fix the underlying problem. Paul, if you need pricing and stuff, happy to reach out. AscendAV.net. Everything's at the bottom. I'm no pressure. I'm just going to give you advice. You don't have to buy from me. That's not what this is about. I just want everybody to have a good time and a good experience in home theater. That's why I became a dealer, is because I felt like I didn't have a good experience and I didn't want that to happen to anybody else. So I talk people out of stuff all the time. Like what did I do today? I was talking him kind of out of Kaleidoscape and telling him that, you've already got a UHD player. You should not buy Kaleidoscape if all you're trying to do is make demos easier. That is not a good use case. Continue to use what you've got. Don't spend the money. Now, if you want to get Kaleidoscape because it's overall more convenient, great. But don't buy it because you're tired of getting up and getting a disc for demo. That's not a great use case to spend the money on. That's kind of a dumb example, but that was one that came up today. Sorry, I'm talking a mile a minute. Great question, Paul. But again, ascendav.net. You can grab my phone number. Nobody should feel hesitant texting me or even calling me. Texting's the best because I do get tied up in meetings quite a lot. But I'm happy to answer anybody's question. No problem at all doing that. Do not fret and think I don't want to bother Ryan. That's why I post my phone number and my email. Do not hesitate to reach out. Happy to help. Great question, though, Paul. Kevin Orr asks, my remotes are struggling controlling anything in my rack at the back of the room. I look like Madonna doing Vogue in my theater. Best options, IR extenders. What remote do you have? There's plenty of IR blaster extenders that you could put in the front. There's tons of options on Amazon. I don't really have a good recommendation for what's best. I think anything should work as long as it's well reviewed. And it's more going to come down to what remote you're currently using. I'm moving in the direction of IP control and then using an IP controlled, if I need to, IR blaster, which I haven't gone down that pathway yet. But I'm trying to control as much IP because I think it's way more flexible. And I have a dog that likes to eat remotes. So we have migrated virtually all of our remotes to our phones or computer or iPad because we have the phones anyway. So why do I keep spending money on remotes when I can just do it on my phone? I think it's a lot more flexible. You can do macros. Some people will say, oh, but I like having a physical remote. And you might. I don't care. It's personal preference. I don't care meaning me. I don't care if I have a remote. Not that I don't care what you think. I don't care if I have a remote. It's personal preference. So I look into Nick Olroyd's Sir Master on AVS forum. He has a cool free app that you can do. You got to kind of know what you're doing, and having some understanding of technical stuff and IT definitely helps, but it's free. It's very flexible. You can do a lot with it. You are supporting yourself. So I do understand that. But Kevin, look at Amazon. I'm sure there's a thread on AVS forum. Maybe Jonathan knows of one. I see him in chat. Jeffrey says the Sewell IR repeaters are super easy and wireless since they transmit across some radio. There you go. Jeffrey's already making recommendations. So look that up on the internet on Google or Amazon. I always try to do Google first to try and support the manufacturer directly instead of giving Amazon the money, but whatever. A series of carefully placed mirrors. That solves the IR problem, but does kind of create some issues audibly. Great question, though, Kevin. Another question for Jeffrey. Also, since experiencing your theater, I have been memorized with learning about Ascendo and how effortless your speakers were. How much of that do you think is speakers versus equipment instruments? I think it's a combination of both. The room, the MadVR Experience Center room is phenomenal, right? You're not going to get the 2-channel experience that room offers without having the room. It's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. But the beauty of Ascendo and other manufacturers like it is when you get a really good measuring speaker that does not try to do anything that it's not natively, you have to do less to it through software. And the less you have to do through software, the better the end experience is going to be. That's why we fix issues in the room first, and then use equipment to fix issues that are unfixable, that we can't fix physically. So you fix the room first, make it as good as you can, and then go from there. The calibration, we didn't really have to do a lot. We finagled it, right, to get it exactly how we wanted, but you don't really have to do a lot. I mean, look at Jonathan. Jonathan uses Odyssey to get his delays and then turns it off. So he has virtually no calibration, and his room sounds great outside of timing. I mean, he used it for timing. So the less is more is the best way that I can say that, Jeffrey. Paulie says Ryan's room sounded the most like being at a live concert and have ever experienced. The big reason for that, and this is also why the room is very dangerous, is because there is very little, if any, distortion. I mean, there is distortion, but there's very little perceivable distortion. People have a tendency to mistake loudness or distortion for loudness. And they think, my ears hurt, it's too loud. Well, if you go to a live concert, it is super loud in a lot of cases. Like a rock concert, super loud. 120, 130 at times, no question. Are your ears hurting? No. They may hurt the next day or 2 days later or never, but that's because you're not encountering distortion. Now, I say my room is dangerous, and my room is dangerous because I can get myself into positions where I'm sitting there jamming out. I am just rocking out. And then I look at the SPL meter and it's 140. And I'm like, oh boy. So a lot of times I will put an SPL meter up to know where I am. And I have figured out kind of where I need to be volume wise of where for sustained listening and where to stay away from. Distortion is your enemy in most of those cases. And unfortunately, we mistake that for loudness. And I've had numerous times spouses come in with their significant others into home theater, and the spouse will say, his room's too loud, or their room's too loud, because it's not always his. Sometimes it's the other way. It's too loud. I don't like it that loud. And I say, okay, that's fine. Let's try an experiment. And I've said this a couple times on here. I'm going to just turn the volume up, and you tell me when it's too loud. And never once has somebody told me it's too loud. Just hasn't happened. Now, I don't go egregiously high, but they've never said that it was too loud. So that tells me that they're mistaking distortion for loudness. And there's very few speakers that are actually capable of doing what we're asking them to do. And there's less rooms. If you get an untreated room, you are creating distortion. You're getting reflections going ping, 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 and just bouncing around. And they're going to create unwanted listening environments. And you may not realize it at lower volumes. You start cranking things up, and over time, it's just going to start wearing you out. So fix the room, then fix those unfixable issues with equipment. That's how we should be attacking this. Sorry, I got off on a tangent. Great question, Jeffrey. Blood Carver says Warfare was boring. Yeah, it was boring. Well, it wasn't boring. I think it showcased a different side of Warfare. To me, it showcased kind of the mundane and going from, I'm not doing anything to just all hell breaking loose. So I appreciated that it was different, but I understand what you mean, Blood Carver, about it being boring. It was very different, and to some, it could come across as boring. Good question, or good statement. I appreciate what you said. Palindrome Guy, when I say lower budget, I mean something like RP clip setups. Oh, Those can sound good. I don't personally like the sound of clips, but that doesn't mean they're bad. And it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be utilized. I mean, you can make them sound good. I think a lot of the issues are the rooms that those setups are put in are totally untreated. So you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot. A really good room can make a really bad speaker sound pretty good. A bad room can make a really, really good speaker sound terrible. Now, something else along those lines, and you can't really do this when you're getting into multi-channel and especially at higher volumes, but something I've noticed in the living room. So a couple weeks ago, a few days before we did the crawl, I had Kef. I ordered a pair of Kef Blade 1 Metas. They're Kef's flagships. I've come to really like Kef, and they went in my living room. Now, for anybody that's been in my living room, it is not treated. It's got 21-foot tall ceilings. It's a big space. It's got a brick fireplace open to a kitchen behind, and it's very open, and it's white, and there's windows. It is not an acoustically good room. I've had Martin Logan electrostatics in there, Martin Logan's F200s and F100s in there, the F20s. I've had Perlisten S7Ts in there. I've had the Ascendo Black Swans. I've had Ascendo the 12s. I've had Ascendo the 10s. I've had Ascendo the 6s. I've had other Kef in there, LS50s, all kinds of speakers in there. What I realized is that while a speaker can sound okay, the Black Swans, because they're very narrow, they sounded decent in that room. I really like how the Kef sound better. And I think the reason is, and I told people this at the crawl, I think the reason for that is that we subconsciously, when we go into a room, have an expectation for how things should sound, right? Our entire life, every experience we have audibly is interactions with boundaries. It's interactions with how sound propagates out and then propagates back off of reflection. And based on those reflections, our ears allow our minds to build a mental picture of what that room should be. And then we subconsciously put ourselves in a position where we have an expectation of how that room's going to sound. When you put a speaker in there that does not perform to that expectation, I don't know, I didn't realize it at first, and now I have come to realize that it gets a little weird. And the Kef, because they have this really, really, really wide dispersion, play better to what that room should be. When we talk, right, it is sound waves coming out everywhere. It is not beamform. It's not just coming straight to the person. It's going everywhere. We're picking up echoes. We're picking up all kinds of different things. So when I have a beamforming speaker, it's not playing into that. The Kef are playing into those reflections. And this is just an opinion. I have no scientific backing on this. This is just something that I've found personally. The Kef play into those reflections and create a sound more akin to what I am expecting. And because of that, it seems like I prefer them more, at least right now. So take that for what it is. I've really enjoyed them. So that's to say that that's in 2-channel. Now you get into multi-channel and stuff going everywhere. That can get really distracting, and probably at higher volumes with all the reflections and things coming off and then coming to my ears, I probably wouldn't have enjoyed as much. You're going to have a lot more distortion. It's going to wear you out. But at least at easy listening levels, I prefer them because they're creating a sound signature that I'm expecting. At least that's what I subjectively think as of right now. That could change, so stay tuned. But Palindrome Guy, that's a long way of me saying that I think people are that get those kinds of speakers are not treating their rooms, and they're creating situations that aren't necessarily the speaker's fault, though some people may not like the way those Clip Sharp sound. A lot of those issues that they may be introducing are parts of the room, and if they fix the room, like building their own acoustic treatments or time aligning the speakers or paying more attention to calibration, so on and so forth, they may have a better overall experience and may get closer to what you're talking about. Jonathan was driving, Peter. Sorry, you probably asked that a million years ago. Yeah, 30 minutes ago. Jeffrey asks, this is on the Ascendo question, the difference between tweeters of the entry levels versus the BE ones. So you have, Jeffrey's been asking a lot of questions about Ascendo, but you have the 5s and the 6s that use a standard soft dome tweeter. Then there is the 6 Pro that has a compression driver. Then you have the 10, which is a compression driver. Then you have the 12, which is a compression driver. Then you have the 12 Pro and the 12 Pro BE. Then you have the 15 Pro and the 15 Pro BE. So the normal 10 and 12 compared to the 10 and 12 Pro use different woofers and different compression drivers. So the Pros are capable of more SPL and more low-end excursion. They can extend further down the range. The Pro BEs use a beryllium tweeter that pushes the breakup mode further out in the frequency range to a point that we can't hear it. So the difference between the Pro and the Pro BE is the beryllium tweeter. That's the main difference. I went Pro berylliums. I like the sound that they produce. I can hear up to that register. If you ask Jeffrey actually prefers the Pros because he can't hear that high, so he doesn't care. So it all depends on what you're trying to get, and it's budget oriented too, because you're going the normals, the Pros, the Pro BEs. There is a price difference, so that's something to consider. But Jeffrey, hopefully that answers your question. If you have any more, shoot me a message, sendav.net, or my phone number's on there. What are your opinions on Synergy monitor audio of wall of sound? I think to buy a complete system. Cristiano, I don't have an opinion on Synergy because I've never used them. I try not to pass judgment on things I've never used or know anything about, and I know nothing about these. So I can't really provide any insight into that because I don't know. So I apologize about not being able to answer your question. Blood Carver, you can actually see efficiency. You can see some of them. Not everybody goes with that. So I don't think. Maybe I'm just thinking of frequency measurements. You may be right. I'm not very smart. So maybe not. I don't know. I'll just say I don't know. That's a better answer. What do you think of the Nexijo Oro Pro MK2 new USD projector? I do not know. I try and stay away from USTs because I think they're a compromise overall, but I understand that sometimes they're needed because you have a compromise in another way that you can't get over. So I know nothing about the Nexigo, so I can't pass judgment on it. If it's like the other ones, I'm sure it's fine. I will pick a standard throw projector every time because of their capabilities and use cases, but that doesn't mean the Nexigo's bad. Just like the Synergies, I don't know anything about it, so I can't provide any insight. When sitting in the rear row of a theater with 2 side surrounds, Stitch is making a statement. Will you ever do... So Kelly says, will you ever do a room tour of the AV experience? As in a high quality videos, I've yet to see much of the room and the equipment. Maybe. It's... I don't know how to put this. It's tough for me to put stuff like that out there because I feel like, and this doesn't mean that it actually is, it feels like I don't know how to put it. I'm sure you guys, me not knowing how to put it, you're understanding what I mean, but maybe. I'll just say maybe. I'd probably like to. I just haven't done it. Oh, no, we are. So we are. So Haterade's coming in September, and he's going to do a tour, I think September, maybe October, and he's going to do a tour of the room. So it'll be on YouTube at that point. I'm just not going to do it myself because I'm not very good at that. So just have to wait. Home Theater Denmark. Hello from Denmark. Hope all are doing great in life. We're doing okay. At least I'm doing okay. I hope everybody else is doing well and they've enjoyed their home theater journeys. MW says, can you describe your expected performance gain using your modified lens? I don't have it yet. My expected performance gain is double the contrast. That's the expectation. And I'm going to lose 15 to 20% of the light output would be my guess. So that's what I think is going to happen. Just doesn't mean it's going to. Hopefully I'll have it next week. I talked to him this week or last week. This week, I guess it's Saturday. It's not next week. This week, and he said he's made good progress. So it does take time. Since each use case and lens position and stuff is different. So he does them all a la carte. It's not like a one size fits all operation. So huge shout out to him. I'm excited for him. Kelly says, have you found a new sofa for your room? I recently found a double-ended chase similar to what you mentioned you prefer. I'm considering changing from 2 rows to 1 row with it. Dude, do not compromise. We talked about this earlier. Don't compromise your experience for somebody else's. They can wait. Or get beanbags that you can bring in if there's more people. And they can sit on the floor, put a bar or chairs that people can sit up. Don't compromise your experience for the 1%. It's not worth it. And couches over theater seating every time. Every time. They're more comfortable. They're more flexible. I've done both. I will not go back. It's not going to happen. Couch every time. I took this couch out, put theater seating in, took the theater seating out, and put the couch back in. That's what's happened. Now, I'm looking for a new sofa because I can't sell this couch. As a dealer, I'm just trying to find something that I really like. I try and only surround myself with brands that I appreciate and I would use myself, not just what has a great bottom line. That's not how I operate. So I'm still looking for the one. I think I found one. It's made by Movia, but I just haven't pulled the trigger on it yet. So we'll see. We'll see. But I think I found one. We'll see if we pull the trigger. I'm saving for a dedicated room. This is coming from Shinedown. Saving for a dedicated room, and I'm thinking about the layout. How significant room may be if the subs are in the front corners of the room as opposed to in the wall behind the screen? It can be significant. I would encourage everyone that is doing a room to start with REW and model the room. It's not going to be an end-all, be-all de facto answer because things will differentiate. Materials are different. It doesn't account for furniture. It doesn't account for people. It doesn't account for a ton of different stuff, but it'll give you an idea of how things will change and how things can change depending on where they're placed and how significant SPL can increase, what your modes are going to be, all that different kind of stuff. So model it. It'll give you a great starting point to figure out what is my difference going to be. I mean, you may be able to put them in the wall in the corner. Maybe. Magic 60 Fiats says, can you briefly explain how your multiple size subs are handling 10 to 100 hertz? Are they across separate crossovers frequency? Thanks, Ryan. So, Magic 60 flats, not Fiats, flats. They are crossed at different frequencies. The 21s are playing with a pass filter down to 30 or so, and then the 32 and 50, which are playing the same frequencies, cross into them. So they go bloop, and they create a flat response. Now, is that ideal? Could you get a better response by having them all the same? Probably, but the 28 didn't exist when we were building a room. And to get the 50 to integrate, we had to do it how we're doing it because the 50, unless I had an array of 50s, would not work with waveforming. So they play at different frequencies. It's like having a speaker with a tweeter and a woofer. That's what I'm doing. The 21s are my tweeter for the subs, and the 32s and 50 are the woofers. That's how that's operating. And we use Storm can do it internally, and then we use a QSC 110F to do it for the turnoff. If we weren't doing waveforming, the turnoff could do it natively, but with waveforming, we need the QSC because we can't present the 32s and 50 to the Trinov when it's setting up waveforming because it will screw everything up because they need to be ideally the same sub. So we present them after and we integrate them later. My room is for my with me in the MLP. Anyone who have stopped by have been very impressed no matter where they... Exactly. People that are not you have different expectations. You are in this space. You're here watching this stream. Your expectations are different than Joe Schmo just coming over to be blown away. So don't compromise on yours. That's all this stream's been, is me ranting about this. Don't compromise on your experience for somebody else's. Don't compromise on the 99% for the 1%. It's not worth it. And Brian Cobb just mentions, excellent point. That makes perfect sense to me. It is very rare to use both rows. Thanks very much. You saved me some money on additional speakers. It's an opinion. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's right. The internet is full of opinions. So I encourage everyone, do not take me for gospel. Go do your own research, right? Use this as a launching pad to do your own research. I want everybody to do things because they think it's right, not because somebody else said it's the right thing to do, right? Do your research, both sides of the coin, and come to a conclusion based on what you feel is the correct direction to go for you, not because of what Ryan said. Quick question, Home Theater Denmark, dropping this in here. And a lot of questions tonight. I love it. Regarding Tactile, sub 4 output on Marantz Cinema 40 is for Tactile effect. Can you talk about how to dial it in? I have no idea how to dial that in, Home Theater Denmark, unless you're talking about like how to dial in the transducers and stuff with the subs. Then, well, when Jonathan gets in, I'll let him deal with that. Jonathan's going to have a much better explanation on how to dial that in. What I can tell you is the transducers are probably going to need a longer delay than you think, even though they're sitting right under your butt. AV700, are there any plans for relaunching Mwave? Yes. The current plan is in conjunction with AVS Forum and to do it the weekend of June 12th of 26. The problem with this date is the World Cup. Little thing called the World Cup. Kansas City is hosting a couple games. Now, it doesn't start until the following week, but I'm just worried about hotels and things like that for that time period. So that's the current date. I couldn't really get any other dates because of availability with the convention center. I'm not really willing to go anywhere else unless it's somewhere else that I can get support because having it out of town makes it a little tricky, especially with moving equipment. So Kansas City Convention, because that's where I'm located, it just makes it easy. And we've been there several times and it's nice. Only issue is the World Cup. So yes, we're planning on it next year, June, the weekend of June 12th. Issues just the World Cup. So hopefully it stays out of the way. And hotels aren't terrible, but we'll see. Palindrome Guy says, thoughts on Soft Dome, Horn, or AMT? Is there any situation where you missed your Martin Logans? With the Black Swans, no. If I didn't have the Black Swans, yes. The Black Swans do everything that I want. They're amazing for sensitivity. I have no wants or desires having them in there. Thoughts on Soft Dome, Horn, or AMT? It comes down to what you're trying to do in the room. I personally, historically, have not been a huge fan of what horns sound like, but the Black Swans seem to get around that somehow. Maybe it's because of the size of their compression driver. Soft domes are probably going to be the easiest to listen to, but they're going to have issues at higher volumes due to distortion. AMTs have a ton of surface areas, so they can kind of get around that. Look at what Wisdom does. Look at what Alcons does. They use a folded tweeter. There's several. You just pick one that works best in the room and overcomes obstacles that you need to overcome. That's my advice. And ones that you like listening to, that you like the sound of. That's also very important. But I like my Black Swans, and I like what the compression drivers do, the coaxials, because they get to absurd volumes without compressing. MW says, if subwoofers move, are they less efficient because some of the energy is going to move in the cabinet? Do they lose tactile bass? You mean if the cabinet, like if they actually walk? I don't know. That would be a question for Aaron. I don't know. That's a good question. I would assume you're losing energy, right? Because that energy is going into the cabinet, but the energy was probably always going in there. It was just inert enough that it didn't move. So I don't know. I don't have a good answer for that. Justin Hernandez. In my room, unfortunately, the sofa is 2 feet from the back wall and I'm 9 feet from the center channel. Can I use rear Atmos speakers directly above me, or are 2 Atmos speakers sufficient? I don't think I would put rear Atmos in that room. I would just use 2, Juan. Don't try and jam something in where it's not an ideal use case. Use things that are fit ideally and don't just jam things in there because more is supposedly better. More is not always better. A properly implemented piece of equipment in space is going to be much better than crap that's everywhere. So in this case, I would say, given your distance behind and you not being able to place the speakers correctly, I would just do 2 and put them slightly ahead of your main listening position. And I think you'll have a great experience. Jeffrey says, so if building a new theater room, there's very few scenarios where you actually need a Trinov then if you design the sub placement smartly. No, I think the Trinov can absolutely help because of standing waves of different frequencies for a room of different sizes. If you had an enormous room and you didn't have those standing waves, maybe, but waveforming can be a huge help because most people aren't going to have enormous rooms that your standing wave is going to occur like way down where you don't care. It's going to happen where you do care. So Trinov absolutely does help, and it helps with seat to seat consistency because you're not going to get seat to seat consistency all the time unless you have a bajillion subs and you have perfect placement, right? Then maybe if you could put subs everywhere and you had perfect placement, I guess that's what your question's talking about, Jeffrey. Potentially, but you'd also need a really big room. I always like having the option, right? Because I don't think anything's ever going to be perfect. And I think what the room EQ does, especially on bass management, can help immensely. So I would still do it, but maybe you could get around it if you spend enough. That's going to be the thing: is can you spend enough to get what you need? What's the deal with Croson Tactile? Are they still in business? I have no idea. I would assume so, but I don't know. I think it's just one guy. They are really good. I do like what Crosons do. But he usually had a really big backlog. So I don't know if he's still in business. I haven't seen anybody buy Crosons in a while. Somebody try and go to the website, see if they're still there. Going down questions. Speaking of subs, Ernie Bless says, speaking of subs, just curious if you have much experience with folded horns. Considering a DIY one for kicks, I have no experience with that. I am not the right guy to ask. I don't do much of anything with DIY with speakers because I am not smart enough. AVS forum, there's a huge section on there dedicated to DIY for speakers and subs. I would highly recommend going there. There are people that are much smarter than I that are going to be able to help you and answer your questions. That's what I would do, Ernie. I am not that guy. I will freely admit that. And I try not to stick my nose where it doesn't belong. And that is a place it doesn't belong because I don't have an experience with it. Continuing down. Sasakanth Ken Churla, I hope I didn't butcher your name. Is using Dirac ART with Ascendo speakers worth it if they roll off at 80 hertz anyway? Yeah, absolutely. Your subs aren't going to roll off there. Then you can use the subs. The subs are going to use ART for sure. And Dirac goes up to 150 hertz, if I remember right. No, I think it goes higher than that. So yes, I would say it's worth it. Unless you have a perfect room, which maybe you do. But in most cases, it can be helpful, especially if implemented properly. Palindromes guy says, when are you going to do the center channel challenge on Jonathan's YouTube channel we discussed a few weeks ago? I don't know. What is the center channel challenge? What does that do? Is that like how far down you can push the SPL before you have an issue in intelligibility. I have no idea what you're talking about. Can you enlighten me? Kelly says, what dB should I be aiming for hertz on my subwoofers and RU as room gain? Took my 28 hertz cheap Q acoustics B12 subwoofers to 95 dB at 10 hertz. So I used a house curve and went from 90 to 75 slope. What dB should I be aiming for hertz on my subwoofers and RU as room gain? Took my 28 hertz. It may have tried to apply a filter there, and you may have had significant room gain. So without seeing your like just basic response of the subwoofer without in its placement, without any type of EQ, I don't know. Dirac can do some weird things. Subwoofers RU is room gain. Oh, room gain. God, where's my head? Yes, room gain can do some crazy stuff, which is what I was saying. So I don't know. Whatever the subwoofer can do without making bad noises. You'd need to do a near field measurement and figure out what your limitations are to given frequency, like max voltage and where it stops going up because it's starting to clip. So without further information, it's tough for me to be able to tell you. I would look at like a compression test. I don't know if Audioholics has one, or if something like Database has one, and look at what the maximum SPL for a given frequency is, because at that, you're not going to be able to go past that given compression. It's no matter how much boost you throw at it, it's just going to compress and you may damage it. So in those situations, I would start with compression testing in a near field and see where you end up, and then don't break things. Still going down. We're catching up. Jeffrey asked another question about Ascendo, active versus passive. And this goes for any speaker. Well, I guess kind of just the Ascendos. The Ascendo actives do not have a crossover. So active means you have an active crossover in the preamp. The expectation with the Ascendos is that you're using the preamp. You can get ones with built-in amplifiers, but the amplifiers, when they were doing them for the active speakers a long time ago for Ascendo, were quite noisy. They had a pretty high noise floor, so they weren't ideal. So what they've started doing is just taking the crossover out of their speakers for the active ones, and then doing that in a digital crossover in a Chernobyl or a Storm, and going from there. The biggest benefit in doing that is you're going to gain some output. The crossover usually eats 3 to 6 dB, so you can gain that from the speaker. A little bit less distortion. I didn't really see it necessary in my particular environment. Plus, I would have a ton of channels because you would need an amp channel for the compression driver and the woofer. Each one is going to be done independently because they're both going to need their own EQ. Theoretically, you could do them together, but you're going active. I would do them both separate. And it would just put my channel count to something absurd, which is why I didn't do it. And it drove the price way, way up for processing and amplification. So we didn't go down that pathway. But in most cases with super sensitive speakers, I don't think it's really necessary. I wouldn't worry about it. You can kind of accomplish the same thing, but it can be hugely helpful. MW does bring up a good point that crossover phase can be aligned better. Yes, but the Ascendos are already pretty good, so I don't think I would worry about it. And you can fix a little bit of that in EQ. So how much you want to chase it, I don't know. How much you want to spend at it, I don't know. It's kind of nice if you need to put amps by the speakers and you can just run coax to them, or not coax, but Ethernet, and carry those. If you're using active amplifiers, that can be helpful, but depends on the situation. Remember, buy equipment to fix problems. How dead is my room? 200 milliseconds, MJEC 60 flat SAS. No, it's about 120 for decay. It's pretty dead. It's a little lower than I'd like, but it sounds pretty dang good. So I'd like it to be around 200, but it's around 120, 130, somewhere in there. There's a lot of absorption. The Officina stuff does really well, and there is a lot of R38, like many, 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 many bats of R38 for sub-absorption. Maxic says, I have a question about using crossover in the AVR. I can't really use the crossover because it introduces an unacceptable amount of distortion, so I'm forced to run. What? Why? Shouldn't do that. I can't really use crossover because it introduces an unacceptable amount of distortion, so I'm forced to run all speakers full range. Interesting. I don't know why it's doing that. Huh. First I've heard of that problem. Wonder what's causing that. K for Consent says, what speakers equipment do you have in the MadVR Experience Center? There's a build log. If you go to if you Google AVS Forum MadVR Experience Center, there is a build log for this. But the equipment is Black Swans up front. So there's 3 of those. And then there's 14 Ascendo 12 Beryllium Pros. There's 11 21-inch kick subs. Sorry, 8 21-inch kick subs, not 11. 32 32-inch subs, a 50-inch sub. There's 165,000 watts of amplification. There's an independent Storm rack with its own amps, an independent Chernov rack with its own amps. And then there's a bunch of sub amps which are shared. We can switch between these systems at will in real time. And there's a Christie Griffin doing the projection on to a Stewart Harmony G3. And then the sources are going to be a MadVR NV Extreme Mark II, which is being fed by a AV Pro Edge MX88X or MX88. It's not the X for matrixing. And then it's got a 4x1 video multi-head for doing some tiling and some other stuff. And then you've got a Kaleidoscape, Apple TV. Those are really the only 2. And then Rune is what I use for music. And then it's the rooms in Officina Acustica, and there's like 8,000 pounds of plywood in that room for the structure. And took us a year to build. It's a lot of fun. Don't regret it, but read the build log. I outline a lot of my issues that I run into, including getting a 50 that then did fit down the stairs. And then we had to build a custom cabinet in the basement. Think before you buy 50s, kids. Seabig says 17-foot wide room, trying to place rear speaker. There's a 5-foot section on the right that comes in 27 inches. Can right rear be in that back corner, or should I pull it out forward to front wall that's 27 inches? They don't have to be perfect. You can kind of fix some of that in EQ, but that's mainly going to be for the reference seating position. Anybody that's outside of that is going to potentially hear issues because they're not going to be in the same spot that the calibration is going to be for. So it depends on how much you care about the other seats. You can get around it, but you're compromising other seats. It is kind of going to depend on the speakers, what their capabilities are. But again, you're going to compromise other seats to fix that issue. So if you don't want to do that, you probably want them in the same place, but then I don't know what the room is. So I don't know. You're kind of creating other problems with the area back behind that speaker. So it's 6 one way, half a dozen another. I think you're just going to have to pick one that's the easiest, maybe. I know that's not a great answer, but it's the answer I'm going to give you. I don't have enough information to provide you with a better answer than that. Christian Kanzenchi. Kanzichi. Christian, you're going to have to tell me how to pronounce your last name. You're on here a lot, and I can never remember how to pronounce it. $5 USD. Thank you very much, my friend. Much appreciated. Never required. Always appreciated. What's up, Brian? I missed the stream for a while. Did you guys review the QL7000? Your thoughts? In which episode did you cover it in? That would have been the one. It would have been a couple episodes after the Projector shootout. I think there's an episode labeled Projector shootout or comparison. We talk about it there. I really liked the QL7000. It was the only one in the comparison that made people have an audible reaction where they went, oh man. When any other projector came on screen, nobody did that. When the Derpy Frog and Cricket came on screen, It was amazing. It was amazing. Derpy little cricket. It's awesome. But like I've said repeatedly during this stream, you buy to overcome an issue in the room. Buy what gives you a better experience. If you got a huge screen, if you need to overcome some ambient light, if you want a really bright image, which I do, get where the QL7000 shines and do your research on it. Don't buy it because I said so. I encourage you to see one. If you want to come out and see one, you can come to the Kansas City Convention Center, MadVR Experience Center. I just hosted a guy in from North Carolina to see one today. He saw the QL3000 and got to experience the Experience Center. So if you guys want to see one before you buy one, because that's a big chunk of change, right? I encourage people, experience them before you buy them, kids. Like, go see them, test drive it, figure out what works. Do you like it? Do you like the way it looks? Are you happy with its native contrast? Are you happy with its black floor, with its ANSI, with its color volume? Does it tick those boxes? You got to see it to know. Don't buy because some opinion or some review says, yeah, this is the best thing since sliced bread. Don't do that. That's a way to be let down. Experience it. Go with your gut. Don't go because Ryan said so. I encourage you, see it first and then make your decision. Spending a couple $100 to see a flight on a $30,000 projector is well worth it. Well worth it. But I like the QL7000. I think it's excellent. I think it's great. Is it the same native contrast as something like an NZ900? No, absolutely not. You level match them for light. NZ900 is going to smoke it, but the QL7000 is 3 times the light. And for HDR content, like Godzilla, Pacific Rim, so good. The brightness makes HDR pop. And people haven't seen HDR until they see it on a super bright screen. It's not the same. Not the same. It changes people. The true pro home cinema sound. Are you maybe aware you're raising your voice? I noticed you're drinking Pepsi and maybe diabetes. I mean, it's diet. I mean, maybe I'll have diabetes one day. I don't know. I like the Pepsi. I've always liked it. Is Pepsi wrong? Should I be drinking Diet Coke? I don't know. I used to prefer Diet Coke over Diet Pepsi, but I don't anymore. I like Diet Pepsi more. It goes with me. And yeah, I raise my voice. I'm very animated. I can actually go more than this. I'm trying to tone it back. I have a tendency to be all over the place. I did professional Twitch streaming for a long time with Combat Flight Sim, and I've learned that people don't like somebody that's just this. They like this. Now, as long as I probably need a compressor on my mic so that I'm not blowing people's eardrums out, but can be very helpful. I think it's more entertaining. But personal preference, you probably like looking at me like, this guy's a moron. Why am I even here? But I think people come for the facts or come for opinions and stuff, but they also like being entertained. I mean, we stick around for me looking like a goof. That's really what it is. People like watching me fail, which if I'm going to make fun of other people, I got to make fun of myself, and I got to be okay falling flat on my face. That's how it is. But I appreciate the comment. Looking out for my health. Thank you very much. Jeffrey says, I'd call your chairs the best mix of theater chair for convenience and comfiness of the couch. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I think I've learned that a low back is really important. I don't like the high back. I think it gets in the way of rear channels. And I like my couch. It was one of those where I saw it in Nebraska Furniture, was like, that's it. We're seeing it across the store. Haven't even experienced it yet. And I know that's the one. And that's what we got. Seth FM says, is there a big difference in reality from what Rue shows when modeling a room if you're using risers? And if so, is there anything? Yeah, there's a difference. Rue does not know everything. It doesn't know the materials. It can get things a little bit wrong. It's not perfect, but it gets you in the ballpark, right? Where you've got that 5,000 foot view to kind of base things on. It's not perfect, but it'll get you in the right arena, if you will. So don't go and say, this is going to be it, because it's not, but it gives you a good point to start with for sure, maybe for placement. Anthony says, use Strato C for $1,500 or a new E, probably under MSRP, assuming I'll pick up a server anyway. Does DV actually do anything when LLDV is enabled in the MadVR E did? Do you have a projector? Because if not, it's going to do nothing. And I would argue that LLDV also does nothing when you've got a MadVR also already going into it. So I wouldn't worry about it. For the Strato C versus the E, I would do the Strato C, depending on how much warranty's left. The Strato E is going to be a 2K upscaled movie wall. The Strato C is going to be 4K. The Strato C has an HDMI audio output. The E is not going to have that. The C is going to be faster. I would just do the C. I think the C is better. Now, you don't have your 500 gigs of onboard storage, but if you're buying a server, just get the C. It just makes more sense. That's what I would do. Personally, for sure. Give me a shout. We'll get you taken care of. I mean, $1,500 for a C is pretty good. If it's got warranty, I would do that. Going down. We're getting caught up. We are almost there. MW says, and this is going back to when I was talking about the Kef blades. Did you say you liked the Kef blade over the Black Swans in the living room? I found the blades lacking dynamic range. Yeah, the Kef blades lack dynamic range because they're not a reference speaker. I mean, they can't do it. So at easy listening levels, yeah, I like the Kefs in the living room. I just think they integrate better with the room, personally, than the Swans do. I think they provide, they probably don't measure better, but they provide a sense of airiness that my brain expects from that room. I wouldn't say they're better. They're not better. They're more to my taste in the living room. In the theater, Swans, no question. Living room, I just like the way the Kefs sound. Doesn't mean the Swans are bad. I just like the way the Kefs sound. So we talked about Croson a minute ago. He says you have to physically call Croson to order 2-month lead time. Okay. C-Big, thanks very much for letting the chat know. Much appreciated. We're almost caught up. Everybody's asking lots of questions, and I love it. Kelly asks, I've put GIC acoustic panels on my ceiling, basically covering in a similar way to what I have seen on yours. I've never figured out the best way to have lights above them. What do you use? I just have rope lights sitting above, like on the panels that are firing up. They're not even stapled. They're literally just sitting on a circle so that you can see them. I mean, I can be lazy at times, especially in my own room, not in customers' rooms, but don't overthink it. They're just Philips Hue that I ran outlets up there to so that I could plug them in, and then you can just see them backlight. That's all they are. It's nothing special. Hexit, to add to my problem, I've noticed it on my rants, 7013 borrowed a 7015 with the same problem, and now I have the Cinema 40, which also has this problem. The distortion appears in the upper mid-range. Upper mid-range. How high? Do you have a really high house curve? Are the subs playing into that? What happens if you turn the subs off and you use the same crossover? Do you have the same distortion? Going down. Going down. Ryan B says, would the Buckeye HypeX NC2K mono work for a subwoofer? Probably. I don't know the specs of the NC2K, and it would depend on the impedance of the subwoofer and how far you want to go down. And I don't know what the frequency response is on that HypeX. So I don't know what it's going to do at lower frequencies. Like, is it just going to fall off? Or is it going to continue to be able to play? How is it going to handle that stress with those lower frequencies? I don't know. I would ask Buckeye. He'll know, and he'll shoot you straight. He's like me. He's not going to sell you something that he thinks is not a good fit. So tell him, be like, I want to I'm thinking about doing an NC2K for a subwoofer. Would this work? Now, the other thing to consider is, do you need that? Could you do like an NX 6000 or 3000 and save the money? I mean, that's a possibility. Jonathan uses those and they have great results. So fans are not necessarily the quietest things ever. And they may not be the smoothest frequency response. I don't know. I haven't measured one, but he has great results with them and his room sounds great. So don't overthink it and don't reinvent the wheel. Ask Buckeye, but also don't overlook those NX or iNukes. I see that I'm being told that Coke is the way to go over Pepsi. Kansichi. I am a moron. Kansichi. Okay, Christian, I appreciate you correcting me. I am sure that I'm immediately going to forget, so do not hate me when I don't pronounce it again next stream, because I'm going to fail again. So that's just what I do. Do I need to drill holes in my riser to absorb bass better? No. The bass is not going to care really in the lower frequencies about the wood. It's going to go right through it. You need lots and lots of things like pink fluffy in there, or feathers, or blue jean material, or different things to absorb those long frequencies. So the longer the wavelength, the less it's going to care about those thin, hard materials. It's just going to go right through them. So no. Now, if it was speakers and you wanted some to go through, potentially you would be creating an absorption diffusion panel. But in this case, no. Just put lots of dense material if you're trying to make it an absorber. Things like R38, feathers, blue jeans, that kind of stuff in it, and it should do great on absorption. Peter asks, are you still using the couch from your old theater? Yes, it is still in there and it works great, though I am looking for another one because I can't sell said couch. I'm a dealer, so need something new. Great questions, guys. Really appreciate it. One more. Vincent Erta. Eric says, how high a gain factor can you have for a screen before unpleasant effects start? Pretty dark room, 3 meters from hum and inch on a JVC MP5. You don't need a whole lot. You could, if you're on axis, you're going to be fine with like a Stewart Cinematech 130. And that's probably where I would stop. The Stewart Cinematech 130 does pretty well. It still can get hot spotting, especially on brighter projectors. But on the MP5, I think you do great. One of its downfalls, not really a downfall, but with any positive gain screen, is as you move off axis, you can get uniformity issues and you can start getting sparkle. But if you're on axis, right in the middle, you shouldn't really. Well, I guess if depending on your viewing angle, you might. But Stewart Studio Tech 130 would be my go-to. Awesome material, been around for a long time. I really like it. It's hugely flexible, great material. If you need one, hit me up, ascendav.net. We can talk about it. And I can even say if I think it's the right choice for you or if something else. I have taught recently, last week, I talked somebody out of a Stewart and told him to go with a silver ticket because it didn't make sense. And the silver ticket just worked for everything he did. It was, instead of being a couple $1,000s, it was $300. So not afraid to talk you out to get you what makes sense for your space. But Vincent, that's what I would do. Somebody was asking about Rue. There's YouTube material all over the place. So if you have questions about Rue, there's also a forum for it that's really active. Look at YouTube and then jump on the forum and see if there's something that works for you. Anthony, this is a question that he was talking about with, and we're going to wrap it up as soon as we get to the bottom, guys. This was a question that he was asked earlier. He says, think it's 1080, not 2K movie wall. So why did MadVR enable the 10K nit LD option? I thought there was something to get FEL data or something. It was really just done because people wanted it. We can use things as reference, like metadata, to try and figure out what the data is doing. But I mean, if you go back and look at the AVS forum thread for MadVR, Matthias even says he doesn't know or see a benefit in doing it. So I've never seen a benefit in doing it. I think MadVR does a fantastic job in what it does already. And I don't think it's 1080. I think it's 2K, and then it's upscaled to 4K for the E, but I could be wrong. You'd have to look at the comparison chart, but most of them are upscaled and supposedly they don't look as good. So the C looks great and it's faster. So if you've got options for a C, that's what I would do. C's great. Pair it with a Terra. It's awesome. John Campbell says, was quoted for a professional soundproof theater room, hung drywall, $20K for 13 by 8. Typical, look for other quotes. Does that include treatments? Because if that does, that's not bad. But it depends on what they're doing, right? I mean, I paid a contractor I think I got a steal at this price to demo and then do the plywood was 10 grand. It was a lot of work. Like don't underestimate how much work that is. And here's what I want people to think about in this context, because my heart goes out to contractors, is you're paying for their expertise. If they can finish a job that would take you multiple weeks in a couple days, don't think that they're trying to rip you off. It's that they've put in the time and effort to learn what they're doing and do it quickly because they can make more money doing that. Right? Don't think that you're getting ripped off. It's like I saw a video on YouTube recently and was like, I'll pay you $60 an hour to mow a lawn, but I'm not paying you that if it takes you less the next time because I'm not paying you X amount per minute. I mean, that's not fair, right? You're paying for their expertise so you don't have to do it. How they do it shouldn't matter. You're not paying them the time. You're paying to get a job done. And as long as it's done to your satisfaction, it should be worth the money. Just because it doesn't take the time, does that mean it's not worth the money somehow? That doesn't make sense. So, John, it really just depends on what is included in that. You say hung drywall, but is it like green glue? Is it risset clips? Is it what kind of drywall? Are they doing acoustic treatments? All that kind of stuff. Hit me up and we'll come back to it. Tiki Time says, have you heard any reviews on Emotiva's new HT processors? I didn't even know they were going to have a new home theater processor. I'll have to go research that after this. I have no idea. No idea. I know historically the ones they've had in the past were not reviewed very well. There was some promises that were not kept. Doesn't mean they're bad. It was just kind of the track record that they were setting with their products. So I don't know. Clean slate, I guess. We'll see where they go. But I have not heard any of that. I didn't even know they were doing one. Anthony says it is 1080. They call 1080 2K, just like the M is 1080, not 2K. They call it what? Really? That's stupid. Marketing. Look at their marketing wizards doing what they're doing. That's ridiculous. So it's 1080p upscale to 4K. Okay. Well, they got me with their marketing speak. Thanks for clarifying that, Anthony. Much appreciated. I'm evidently can be really gullible. So somebody asked me, I like Pepsi. Do I like Pepsi Mango earlier? And I'm seeing this because the True Pro Home Theater Cinema Sound is mentioning Pepsi Mango. No, I've not tried that. Is it worth trying? Pepsi Cream Soda sounds good. I don't know. I kind of like the basics. I've always drank Diet Pepsi, so I kind of like it. It's just my thing, I guess. Don't judge me for it. Though chat seems like they're judging me for it. Christian Kensichi, I got it right. He's probably going to tell me I got it wrong, but I think I got it right. What do you think of the Summit Hi-Fi A11 Gen 2? I know nothing about it. Though if it ticks the boxes and it's reviewed well and it's measured well, there's nothing wrong with it. But I know nothing about it. Let's have a look at it real quick. The Summit Hi-Fi A11 Gen 2. Summit Hi-Fi A11 Gen 2. What is this? Oh. 11. Why does it have a screen on it? 11 channels. That's a lot of channels. How much power? Why does it have a screen on it? 350 watts at 8 ohms for LCR and 175 watts at 8 ohms. Is it able to deliver all of those at the same time? It says it is. I mean, if it can, that's a pretty good deal. Is it Class D? I'm not looking at chat. I'm in the website looking at this. I guess I could share my screen. Let's share my screen. Let's do that. That would make more sense. I don't want to share this window. No, stop it. Go away. Okay, we're sharing this. We're gonna do this. Okay, you guys can see this, right? So here's the amp. And then it does 350 watts at 8 ohms for LCRs. And then it does 8 times 175 watts. I mean, that's pretty good. My question is, does it do it all channels driven? I don't know. Does chat say? I don't know, MW. I don't know that ATI carries the same weight that it used to. Maybe it does. But I haven't had much experience with ATI or monoprice lately, so I don't know. But Kensichi, Christian, if it does what it says it does, maybe I'd want to listen to its noise floor and actually have it measured by a mirror to see what its actual specs are. Not to say that it's bad or something. I just want to know what it's doing. That's why I think measurements are important, to just see what it's doing. I can tell you it's not going to measure the best, but hell, even the Storm, the Trinov, all that stuff, they don't measure the best, and they do great. So things do not need to measure the best in order for them to fit the bill and do what we need them to do. I just want to know, is it delivering adequate power? Does it have an adequate noise floor? And is it at an adequate price point for all of that to make sense? At $2,000 for 11 channels, that's pretty good. I mean, that's under $200 a channel. That's pretty good for a good amount of power too. So maybe I'd want a mirror to measure it. Yeah, Strato E is 4K video with 2K upscaled UI. Yeah, you got that right, Andy. I think we've come to the end, unless somebody has other questions. That was a fun stream. I haven't done one by myself in a while. I enjoy going through all of that and answering all the questions. You guys had a lot of questions tonight. It's a lot of fun. Do you guys enjoy just the question streams? That we can just go through it? Do you enjoy just me bam, 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 rapid firing through stuff? Is that enjoyable? Quick note, so I am starting a AVS forum stream podcast that I'm doing with Eric. That airs on June 3rd. So next week. That'll be the first one. It's going to start rough. They always start rough. Hopefully it's solid. The first episode is about an hour long, and we talk about just our journeys. So hopefully you guys can watch that and give us some criticism. Like, constructive criticism here and for those streams is really important. Those podcasts. I think it's always good to go through that and get criticism from you guys, because otherwise I don't know what I'm doing right. And I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Does it sound good? Does it look good? Does it look bad? Do I have a booger coming out of my, I don't know. It's hard to have self-introspective when you're just talking to a camera. And I like thinking that I'm talking to you guys. So you guys have all enjoyed the stream. Okay. One thing that I want you all to do, I want you in future streams and in comments, if you notice that we said something wrong, I said something wrong, Jonathan says something wrong, you notice in a past stream that something's wrong, let us know, because I am on a journey just like you guys. I've said this a lot, but I'm on a continual journey for growth. I never want to stop learning. There's a ton of stuff in this space that I don't know. I've come a long way. I started this really professional journey at the end of 21. So I've only been doing this for not even 4 years, 3.5 years. I mean, I was an enthusiast before that, but how do we find the podcast? It'll be on AVS. They're going to post it on the AVS homepage. There'll be a thread about it, Brian Cobb. But anyway, call us out if we're not saying something that's true. Like, we may think it's true, but I want to know if we're wrong. And I want to please provide a source. Just don't go, hey, when you said this, you were wrong. Like, let us know and give us some constructive criticism, provide some sources so I can go read and learn and educate myself on what to do and how things are. Because like I said, it's a journey for all of us, right? I'm no different than any of you guys. We're just at different places in our journey. Not that I'm in a different place than you guys. Just that's a general thing to say is everyone's at a different place. And we're all just headed in the same direction. And nobody wants to reinvent the wheel. You just want the sound to be like a cinema. I'm wrong about Pepsi. How do we find the pod? Oh, you guys got it. Anyway, I think this is where we'll close it up. Check out AVS Forum for that stream, that podcast. It should be posted by Eric sometime. And I want to know what you guys think. Constructive criticism is really important. And say that it's constructive criticism because it can be, if it doesn't go over well, tough to read a bunch of negative comments. But I have been doing this long enough that I know that you guys just want it to be better. And nobody wants to waste their time, right? They want to read things and listen to things and do things that they're entertained and they enjoy. And that's what I want to bring to all of you guys. So if you guys have anything to say about this, drop a line in the comments, send me a message on ascendav.net, send me a text. I do encourage people to reach out. I'm not mean, I promise. I love to talk to you guys. I love to have people in. I will go get you from the airport. I have a guest bedroom that people can stay at if they want to demo equipment or want to come check out the Experience Center. Next movie to watch? That's a great question, Tiki. Do Warfare. I just watched it. So do Warfare. We'll talk about it next stream. Watch Warfare. I know it just came out. It's probably available on streaming. It's from A24. Try that one. I think that's a good one to talk about because it's kind of decisive on whether people are going to like it or not because it's such a different war movie. I want to know what you think. And then we'll go from there. But Warfare is going to be the next one. I'm sticking with it. I'm not thinking about it. So we're going to call it there for now. I will be on probably next Saturday, I think. I don't know. Friday or Saturday. We never know. But Friday or Saturday, I'll try to get this scheduled as early as possible. I got to figure out where Jonathan's going to be. And then we will go from there. Podcast on AVS Forum. Be looking for that. And I will see you guys next weekend. Stay safe out there. Enjoy the rest of the week. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. We'll catch you guys next time. See you later. Have a good one.